Your next door neighbor works a 9 to 5 job, has 2 kids, drives a Ford Escape, and coaches your son's baseball team. The everyday average American. But one day he spontaneously opens fire on his wife of 15 years. After a week-long trial, the papers read this murderer has gone free due to temporary insanity. But what does that actually mean? The insanity defense is a legal defense in which the defendant claims to be inculpable for their actions due to their mental state, claiming that they were unable to control themselves. Defenses that are successful usually include extreme severity or those that come from physiological disorders. Some examples of these disorders include psychoses, severe depression, or anxiety disorders like post-traumatic stress disorder. These diseases affect a person's overall perception of reality. Despite the use of the insanity defense in many high-profile cases, it is only used in about 1% of cases in the United States, and it is successful only about 25% of the time. Over the course of several centuries, due to changing ideals of mental illness in society and unclear criteria for use in criminal cases, the insanity defense has become increasingly debated across the American judiciary system.
Although the insanity defense was used in England in the 18th century, the plea would not be used in America until 1859. The prominent politician Daniel Sickles will bring the insanity defense to the United States and change America's courtrooms forever. As a prominent figure in government, the 33-year-old man and his 15-year-old wife, Teresa, attended countless congressional events. However, on the occasions when he was unable to attend with his wife, he often asked his friend, Philip Barton Key, to escort her. Soon enough, an affair developed between Key and Mrs. Sickles, and once Sickles received an anonymous letter telling him of the scandal, he takes to the streets. Sickles will spot Key waving a handkerchief across the road from their home, a sign for his wife to come meet Key. Sickles will react immediately, racing from his home and shooting Key twice, murdering him. Sickles was sent to jail, and the makings of the famous American trial would begin. From the start, the public was on his side due to his status as a wealthy politician and respected individual. The public sees him as the grieving husband, a victim. The defense builds off of this, seeing the chance to use the temporary insanity plea bargain. Sickles' lawyer, John Graham, will call countless witnesses to the stand, all who attested to his fragile mental state at the time of the crime. The many witnesses, along with an outstanding reputation and sympathy from the public, would bring about 2 words, not guilty, that both shaped Sickles' future, and America's debates on mental illness and crime would increase exponentially in the coming decades.
Roughly 120 years after Daniel Sickles' first bargain with the temporary insanity plea, another case would make its way to the headlines with the successful plea bargain. Andrea Yates killed her 5 children on June 20th, 2001, by drowning them in the bathtub. Yates was found not guilty for her crimes, drawing the lines between legally insane and not. She had been suffering for some time with very severe postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, enduring previous nervous breakdowns, and even attempted suicide preceding the murders. At her 2002 trial, Yates' attorneys argued she was insane, while the prosecution claimed she failed to meet Texas's definition of insanity because she was able to tell right from wrong. After deliberating for less than 4 hours, a jury found Yates guilty, rejecting her insanity defense. She was sentenced to a life in prison. However, in 2005, a Texas appeals court reversed the conviction and granted Yates a new trial after it was learned that a prosecution witness gave false testimony. On July 26, 2006, Yates' outcome took a drastic turn as the appeal jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity, committing her to a mental institution. 3 years later, another woman, Lisa Montgomery, was indicted for the murder of Bobby Jo Sinnett after stabbing the woman and kidnapping her premature child. Montgomery will also attempt to use the insanity defense, however unsuccessful, as the jury found the evidence unconvincing. Montgomery's defense attorneys stated that she was suffering from pseudocyesis, which causes a woman to falsely believe that she is pregnant and exhibit outward signs of pregnancy. They portrayed her as a victim of severe mental illness, causing her to enter a dreamlike state when the killing took place. Montgomery was said to be driven by fear because she believed her ex-husband, Carl Bowman, would expose that she was lying about being pregnant and use it against her. As Montgomery's false due date approached, she began conducting searches on the internet about Sinnett and researching different aspects of childbirth. The defense portrayed those efforts as evidence that she believed she was pregnant, but the prosecution called them proof of premeditation. When Montgomery arrived at the Sinnett home, she carried in her coat pocket a length of white rope to strangle Sinnett and a stainless steel knife to cut out her baby, proving the action was not spontaneous or impulsive. Montgomery was charged with the capital offense of kidnapping, resulting in death, and 4 days later, the jury recommended the death penalty.
Present-day America struggles with the practice of the insanity plea due to the moral questions that arise. With the increase of mass shootings, many of those convicted have attempted to use the plea. Supporters of the plea condemn the anti-supporters for seeking revenge on the shooters instead of logically acknowledging the insanity defense is rarely used and won. The Parkland shooter, Nicholas Cruz, and his defense team have tried to use the insanity plea. The argument seems to be unsuccessful, however. With an ample amount of evidence that the shooting was premeditated, hundreds of witnesses, and his own confession, it seems highly unlikely that the insanity defense will stand. Despite this, the case has gained an immense amount of media attention, which has fueled distinguishing sides of this controversy. Society has become very disgruntled over such a controversial topic, and the media feeds into this when it comes to mass shootings and the insanity plea.
So who gets the defense and who doesn't? When looking at the success of the defense, demographics show that white, older, and well-educated males who were unemployed at the time of the crime and have a history of psychiatric treatment are most often acquitted. Although this demographic is more often granted the plea, the legal system has set standards for what are acceptable mental illnesses for the insanity defense. Typically, these restrictions ensure that only those truly deserving of the plea are pardoned for their crimes. Most states use what is called the McNaughton test to determine if someone is legally insane. The test assesses the thought processes and perceptions that the defendant had at the time of the crime. According to this test, a person is considered legally insane if, at the time of the offense, he or she suffered from a defect of reason from a disease of the mind. Due to mental disease, the defendant did not know what he or she was doing was wrong and therefore are acquitted.
The insanity defense, although extremely unsuccessful and rare, has caused countless controversial discussions of mental health and crime for centuries. Jurors hesitate to accept the defense, wishing to refrain from the repercussions of giving criminals minor punishments. The public sees the defense as an easy out for criminals, and the defense has to perfectly paint the scene of a temporary loss of perception of reality. Together, these concerns have created a problematic and limited use of the insanity plea in courtrooms across the nation. Particularly in modern-day America, both citizens and the Department of Justice have to make crucial decisions on how to proceed with the rulings of mass shooters who make temporary insanity pleas. The insanity of the insanity defense is a reoccurring problem in the justice system that will continue to present controversies until society can understand the complexities of mental illness and utilize these discoveries in the future of America.